Hey Catherine, how you doing? I had a few people email me about Walmart deal and videotaping and stuff. I thought maybe we could talk about that tonight. Hey Caitlin, how you doing? Hey Mark, how are you? I mean, there's a lot of nuances to it, you know. I mean, people aren't sure where. How's it going, Kate? Another hot one today. Oh, do you really? Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions, like, you know, with regard to law enforcement and where you can, where you can't, that kind of thing. Most places post where they don't want you videotaping. But as you can see, or listen to yesterday, Walmart doesn't. Oh, cool, Kate. That's cool. In Walmart, technically, it's not illegal to videotape in a Walmart if you just looked at it on its face value. I mean, there's no expectation of privacy when you're in a grocery store, department store. On the other hand, Walmart has a policy, as it turns out, that they don't want people being videotaped in their store, and they don't want any of their merchandise being videotaped. Basically, it doesn't matter what they want videotaped and what they don't want videotaped. It's up to them. It's private property. So if they put you on notice and say, hey, look, we don't want you videotaping or taking photographs in here, that's the end of the game. And if you don't do it, they can get you banned from the store. And they have facial recognition now on their security system. It's also tied into Homeland Security. Most people don't know that. And, you know, it's stupid, really. See, when that guy asked me yesterday, he had a complaint of me taking pictures of people in the store, customers in the store, which I didn't do. But on the other hand, hey Joanne, how you doing? Hey Diane. Yeah, isn't that the truth? And it's the same when you're videotaping law enforcement officers. The law on that in most states, at least in Michigan, is it's all right to videotape them, but if it pisses them off, what they're going to try and do is argue that you're interfering with an investigation, which, you know, can be determined in court and $5,000 later. So it's just kind of a good idea to, you know, they can come up to you and say, turn the recorder off, and you say, no, I'm not turning it off. He says, turn the recorder off, and you say no. He may write you up for interfering with an investigation, which is a stretch, but it may stick. You never know. The main ingredient of videotaping where you're not supposed to is whether or not people have an expectation of privacy. Everybody knows a dressing room or some kind of stuff like that is illegal. And I'll tell you another thing, and now it's more prevalent now than it's been. We just had a couple charges in our county about a month ago, and that's revenge porn, or videotaping having sex with someone without their consent. That's a felony. So, I mean, I don't think people realize the consequences sometime of what just innocently videotaping can get you into. I don't think hiding a video camera in a bedroom is innocent, but you know what I mean. And let's say I saw Mark in Detroit a lot, and I didn't like him. So every time I saw him on a public sidewalk or outside, I would go and I'd start videotaping him. He could tell me to quit it, and after he's told me to quit it and I haven't, he's called the police, and there's a record established that he doesn't like it, he doesn't want me doing it. Wherever he goes, I'm there with a camera, a cell phone. He can actually get the paper trail started for stalking. which means that he can get a court order, he can get a personal order of protection, and whatever's spelled out in that, the next time I'm around him and he calls the cops and the cop shows up, and I'm within that parameter, sometimes you can't even be within a mile of him, I'll be arrested. So a lot of these people on YouTube think that you can just type, it's your right as a citizen to videotape with an asterisk, sort of. I mean, in a way, I can understand why people in a Walmart, wouldn't want to be videotaped. They don't realize that, I was doing a chat, I don't think, or they don't really understand. They think if the camera's up and you're not with it not next to your ear, you must be photographing them, which isn't necessarily true. I was videotaping them, but not really intentionally. I was just walking around, but it doesn't matter. If I took the video camera and I pointed at the ceiling the whole time I'm there, they don't want you doing it. So it's game over with regard to videotaping cucumbers for Catherine. Yeah, well, that's the thing. You can always claim it, though, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stick in court. Let me give you a personal example, or not a personal example, but an example of a perfect example. People, cops, with the exception of drunk driving, are not supposed to have jurisdiction on private property. So in theory, you could go into Walmart, you could go to the busiest time of the day, and you could blow every stop sign there was doing 70 mile an hour in front of the store, blow your horn, people running and screaming. Now that's private property. So if drunk driving is the only exception, and it isn't a felony, how are they going to enforce the law against you? I'll tell you how. If a cop saw you doing that, he's going to write you up for probably reckless driving. And when that goes in front of a judge, I guarantee it's going to stick. So, there's a lot of areas like this that people will get themselves into trouble with because they're just not sure. When I was scrolling through just for the hell of it last night, looking at some other videos online, I saw where they've caught a bunch of people in Walmarts videotaping women up their skirts and weird shit like that. Which makes sense because they're busy stores and there's already a lot of people there. Obviously, that's a crime. Sorry about that. I got a phone call. I got a meeting with an. It's going to be late. So those are different things you got to keep an eye out for. You can always claim that you're protecting your rights and that kind of stuff, but just like Johnny Cochran said somewhere along the OJ trial, the most significant and powerful person in the criminal justice system is a beat cop at 3 a.m, and that's no shit. You can forget a jury and a judge and peers and all that bullshit. When it's 3 o'clock in the morning, the last person that you want to piss off is the cop that's got you pulled over at 3 o'clock in the morning. And another tricky one, see, Michigan, I'll tell you, it put a real dent in traffic stops. When they legalized marijuana, law enforcement's ability to search your car whenever they wanted to, if you were smoking marijuana a lot of the time, went out the window, because that used to be probable cause to search your car. Well, now they don't have that anymore. So, basically, unless you give them consent, and why would you do that? They're straw grasping to find a reason to look. It's interesting. So, it's I wouldn't even say it's a gray area. It's pretty established. I'll tell you another, a lot of law that's getting tested now is with these drones. Where can you fly a drone? I'll tell you where, a lot less places than you could fly them a year ago. Every year it gets more and more restrictive where you can fly those things. And you can tell the government's kind of forcing everybody that owns one of them to register them, and basically they want to know who has them and where they're at. So when one smacks into the side of an airplane, they can start searching that area. Catherine, you know that guy that I told you that takes those really good videos of those freighters going up and down the Detroit River? I'll tell you, he's going to get his ass handed to him someday. Now, you could say, well, why would he do that? He's just out there flying a drone. I'll tell you why. Because I don't know the exact verbiage on it, but they've designated areas now around ports and airports and shipping ports and that kind of stuff as international shipping zones. And it's really kind of a vague law. It really is. I mean, people say sometimes laws are vague. They're not vague. Like with drones, it's not vague at all. They don't want you flying them there. And with this shipping zone, it's really kind of vague. And it's kind of like pornography. People think, well, is it legal or not to make pornography, let's say, in a state like Michigan? Yeah, it's a good question. You know what? You could go give an attorney $5,000 today, and he couldn't guarantee you 100% what he told you is accurate on whether or not it's legal. Another vague law. And the theory behind laws being vague is that they can charge anybody they want. Which, on the international shipping ports, I got an idea. It's probably a good idea. But that guy flying those drones, I think the only reason he hasn't got it shoved up his ass is because nobody has seen the drone. You're out there watching for boats, and you're looking over at Windsor, and you're seeing Belle Isle, and, just running the goddamn ship. A drone is just, if you're not looking for one, they're hard to see. And if he's always kind of high. So I doubt they're looking up in the air for anything. They're looking down below to see if they're going to clobber something. But I got an idea that one of these days he's going to get a knock on his door by, I believe that, Mark. He's going to get a knock on his door, or Homeland Security is going to corner him driving off the Belle Isle Bridge, and God knows what's going to happen. But I'll bet you money there's some fine print someplace. Or even if it's not fine print, where they could hand you your ass with flying a drone that close to a freighter. Hell, I know people that they've went and read the Riot Act too and pulled them over and searched your boat and everything by just driving down the Rouge River in a 12-foot fishing boat. The laws have really gotten, restrictive where they need to and vague where they need to be. When I first got interested in flying, I liked it as a kid, but I couldn't afford it until I got older. I was in a ground school with a guy that had got caught flying without a license, and this was back in the 70s. And you think it's crazy, wow, somebody flying without a license. Really, it's not crazy. Let me tell you, flying is not that big of a deal. It's no different than operating a boat. The hardest part is navigation, and even that's not that hard. And when you get a good guy that's a good instructor and he takes away the mystique of it all. I remember when I had my pilot's license for about 6 months, and I used to like flying at night. And I was doing touch and goes at Metropolitan Airport, Detroit. It wasn't very busy, and I was based out of Ann Arbor. And I can remember damn near having a panic attack because there was a 747 coming in, and I was doing a touch and go, and I was really nervous. And it just occurred to me, I am up here flying an airplane, and there's 747s around here. This is just nuts. I could not believe for about 30 seconds I was actually the pilot of a plane. So, but my point here is once you get like a good instructor, I was really afraid of flying when I started. It's not hard at all. But my point here is, you think it's crazy someone could be flying a plane without a license. They're all over the place. There's a lot of older guys that learned to fly from relatives in rural areas like where I live. And they just didn't want to go. They wanted to go up and buzz around, buzz the cow pasture and blah, blah, blah. Those days are over too. And they just, for whatever reason, couldn't pass the ground school or whatever. But back then, I asked the guy, he had a cabin up in Empire, Michigan. I asked him, what did they do to you when they caught you? And he said, well, all they told me to do was go to ground school and get my license. Now, and back then, I would get in debates with flight instructors about what would happen with somebody if they got caught flying without a license. And they'd always say, you're going to get this and that, and you're going to go to prison. So what we'd do is we would call the FAA, and, we'd put it on speakerphone. And the FAA, we could never get a straight answer. Nobody could really tell us what was going to happen. Everybody'd say it was a bad idea, and you better hope you don't get caught. But basically, there was nothing in place to nail people because it wasn't that big of an issue. In their minds, people flying around without a pilot's license. But I'll tell you now it is. When I used to leave Ann Arbor, the way that my sister would know that I was here would be to buzz her house, which is about 2.5 miles from this McDonald's you're looking at. And everybody come out and the neighbors would wave, and I'd go back and I'd buzz it one more time just to make sure they heard me. Those days are long gone. You do that now and you're in huge trouble. Plus with the advent of cell phones and video cameras, you would be so shafted it's ridiculous. I'll tell you what happened to me one time. After I moved down to Florida, I wasn't there this long. I was down there around like 93, 94. And I had a buddy of mine that he kind of did that kind of stuff. All the guys I knew buzz places, go down the Detroit River, buzz the freighters, fly it around the Detroit lane. It was just like something you did. I mean, it wasn't crazy. We weren't like 5 feet from their head, but people seemed to really like it. So anyway, I'm down to Florida. I'd sold my airplanes. A buddy of mine came down and visited. And I ended up renting a 172 out of West Palm Beach. So we flew to Key West. And I rented it out of an airport down in Lantana. Anyway, long story short, we go down to Key West, spend a couple days, screw around. The way down there, we're flying low, and you'd see those rays swimming, stingrays, and we'd circle around those, and there'd be girls on the beach, and we'd buzz those. We did it the whole way down and the whole way back, the whole length of the Keys. And then as we got close to Miami, well, you couldn't be screwing around there because you were coming up on Miami International Airport, and you just can't be, busting airspace and causing problems that close to an airport. So anyway, we make it back to where I rent the airplane, and I'm landing, and it shows you how shit happens. I land, the guy says, hey, did you have a good trip? Yep. And another guy comes around, and he says, hey, had a pretty good time down there flying around Marathon, huh? Getting pretty low, huh? And I said, yeah, we were, sometimes we got low. He said, no, you were getting really low. I'm thinking, how in the hell does this guy know this shit? I haven't even rented an airplane before. I'm 200 miles away from where we left. Long story short, guys will buy airplanes and they'll lease them back to flight schools. This guy leased that 172 that I rented from this airport in Lantana. He leased it back, and that was the one I rented. They were having a party in the back of their house. Outside, and we said they thought that the airplane was going to hit the house. They thought, as it turns out, they thought it was great. He recognized it, of course, as his airplane. And he didn't make a complaint or anything. He just casually mentioned it to the guy at the place where the airplane was leased back. But that shows you how you can get caught at bullshit. But those days are over. You bust any rule of flying now, too, and they're going to stick it to you and make an example. Another thing, too, when I was flying, one of the things we would do when we'd take somebody for an airplane, we'd go down to the Fermi plant, Monroe. That nuclear plant. We'd fly around, we'd get real low and fly right over the top of the stacks, and that steam's coming out, and it makes the airplane like jar real heavy. And people'd scream, and we'd laugh, and that kind of. Everybody I know that did that for like years. Now you get anywhere near that Fermi stack, and you're screwed. Another thing, we'd fly over Tiger Stadium, not really low like that Learjet did that time, but low enough to where people be waving. Circle the stadium to the right, circle it to the left, go home. They will hand you your ass for that right now, too. You can't do any of that stuff anymore. The good old days are gone. Anybody want to go flying? Yeah, it's crazy now. Also, back then when we were flying, the president used to come into places like Detroit or other places that I'd been. There would be guys, they're NOTAM, they're called Notice to Airmen. There'd be guys that would not get a briefing. They wouldn't get a briefing because they're staying local. Nobody was expecting them anywhere. And if the airplane had a problem, you'd be able to talk to a million people that, hey, I'm going to be crashing north of Northville, or I've got engine problems. You could probably make it somewhere, or at least somebody would know where you were at. And it wasn't uncommon for pilots to break this sacred airspace when a president was in town, and all they get was a stern warning. It's like, hey, you dumbass, you're supposed to check. We had this note in, this was a prohibited, restricted flight area. You weren't supposed to be there. Slap on the hand. You do that now, you're going to get 2 F-15s next to you. And if you don't obey their commands, they're going to smash right out of the sky. Now that would be extreme. You'd have to ignore them and, probably keep heading to a big building or something. But they got the green light to blow your ass out of the sky. Yeah, man, the world has changed so much with that 9/11, man. That set every pilot's career I know back 10 years. They're all 10 years behind where they would have been if that hadn't happened. Well, my phone rings again. I'm going to have to take off. It's a accountant that I'm meeting for lunch in McDonald's. So that's a little different than videotaping in a Walmart, but you get the gist of it. Catherine, what do you think of that Walmart? Do you agree with it or not? Think you should be able to videotape in there? The irony of it is Walmart's videotaping you when you're in there the whole time. Well, what time do you think's a good time? Yeah, Mark, you're right. You're exactly right. Mark, you're smart enough to realize it's the real deal. It's not just because we're getting older. It's real. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be doing anything wrong. They don't want people videotaping or taking photographs. It's private property. I mean, if I opened your door and walked in and started videotaping you, other than not being invited, what would I be doing wrong? It's your house, your rules. You look at concert venues now, look at the fine print on a ticket. I think instead of worrying about all this way out shit that happens every 25 years, I think they need to start worrying about putting netting around every baseball stadium so some 2-year-old doesn't get cracked with a fall-tipped ball between the eyes. That's been happening all summer. I mean, you can't tell me in this. I'm not saying put up a deadliest catch net so you miss half the game because the net's so big, but god damn, this is ridiculous. Yeah, they do shopping vlogs, but if they come up to them and they see him doing it and they kick him out and they catch him in there again, it's going to be a problem. In Walmart, if you get caught shoplifting there, you're banned out of the store permanently. And like I said, they have facial recognition now. They refer to it as being trespassed in their system. And the next time they send you a certified registered letter return receipt. And if they catch you in that store, you're going to be arrested for trespassing. And like I've mentioned before, even trespassing is a misdemeanor. It's the same bullshit of going into an abandoned building in Detroit without permission. I mean, you think, misdemeanor, it's not that big a deal. Yeah, it will be when you try to go over to Canada. They won't let you in with a misdemeanor on your record. Yeah, you're right, Mark. They won't let you. A misdemeanor isn't what it used to be. Expired tag is a misdemeanor. If you look at these job applications, every single one of them asks if you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor, and then they want an explanation. Well, if there's 100 people applying for a job, and 99 of them checked no on a misdemeanor and one checked yes, why would you hire the one that checked yes? It's just a, it's just a, it can hurt you. can hurt you for a passport. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of shit that I like. If I feel like doing it, I want to be able to do it. And that includes going over to Windsor, even though I go there once every 10 years now. Just the idea of not being able to do it. I'll tell you where it nails a lot of people. Drunk driving tickets, hunters and fishermen. They get a drunk driving ticket when they're someplace, and it gets on their record, and all of a sudden they can't hunt and fish to go over to Canada. No, you're right, Cheney. I think, too, that somebody was telling me, I think it was Kat telling me the other day, that it's a felony to get caught texting if you have a CDL in West Virginia. I mean, that's the way it ought to be. It should be a felony, man. This texting and driving is nuts. Yeah, it's a different place now. It really is. Same with, I'll tell you another thing. You know another thing that's a felony? Accessing someone's email. If someone hacks your email, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, employer, whatever, and it's very easy to prove, that's a felony. Look up, Google Jeopardy college professor caught emailing administration, caught hacking administrator's email. She got canned, and she was charged with a felony. And you think a misdemeanor's bad? Get a felony on your record. You know, now after I've become like a little more well versed in some of this stuff, I always wonder when I hear these guys getting these 10 and 15-year sentences, like these mayors and these governors, like of Illinois as an example. I always wonder, it's one thing having that idea. It's another thing, who's going to hire these people later on? Because part of employment a lot of times is bonding people and insurance. And sometimes underwriters, they don't want to bond or insure anybody that has a convicted felon. That's part of the issue, and that's part of why they ask. So society is in a severe decline. I agree. No, ask Mark that's on here. We talk about it all the time. It's the haves and the have-nots. I wish I was like 15 years older. I mean, that's terrible thinking that way. I'm caught right on the end of like maybe 15 years of witnessing this bullshit. I mean, I can't imagine how it's going to get better. Yeah, first it's Obamacare. And then, well, people have insurance. And then the employers, well, they'll work everybody up here 39 hours to get around that. And then if you get insurance, you've got a $5,000 or $6,000 deductible. You know, I was talking to a clerk at Walmart the other day. I wasn't videotaping her either. And she said that over half the people that come in there have insurance, that use the discount coupon that you get through the manufacturer of a drug and pay out of their own pocket, because it's cheaper to pay that than it is the copay they want when you have insurance. I mean, that is just nuts. I mean, what kind of insurance is that? And now they're going to start squeezing Medicare. You know, in a lot of ways, if you need expensive medications to keep you alive, you're better off being flat broke and on Medicaid. No deductible, no copay. I mean, what kind of motive is that? Incentive. It's just nuts. When it pays to not have any money and not be working, than the contrary. Yeah, you're right. Society is in a decline. It just sounds like it's so pessimistic and so negative, but you know, nobody can ever really come up with a rational argument against it. It's the same with Detroit, man. Yeah, Cheney, I believe it. It's the same with Detroit. Look, I like Detroit. I grew up near there as a kid. Nothing ever is the same than when you knew of a big city when you grew up near it. I mean, there's similarities to big cities, but I like Detroit. I wish the best for it. But the fact of the matter is, people say, well, you know, what would you consider moving to Detroit? I would consider moving to Detroit if I was a young guy or a young couple. I'd give it a whirl. But somebody that is like middle-aged, I would not consider moving to Detroit. And I'll tell you why, because it's going to be hard for you to get good paying jobs. They're basically gone. The public transportation is very poorly organized from day one. It's late. It takes you 2.5 hours to get to a job that's 14 miles away from where you live. Crime is through the roof. Insurance is absolutely cost prohibitive. Unless you're upper middle class, a neighborhood that you'd feel comfortable living in is pretty hard to find. I'd go out in a rural place like where I'm at. Finish out your last years not being scared of being murdered every night you go to bed. Detroit's high crime, sorry. It has improved, but those crime figures, there's a million websites you can go on. You can go on the Detroit Police Department's website and track crime by, you know, the type crime it is, that kind of thing, rape, robbery, murder, drugs, all that shit. Shit, you'll turn that damn thing on, rather than seeing, you know, 1,000 specks, the whole goddamn page will be blue. You're right, Mark. Yeah, you know, I'll tell you though, I've checked into that welfare a little bit, not a lot, and evidently there's an incentive to keep people from having more children. The gist of it is, and the little bit that I've read about it, is that it's rock bottom poverty. You're not, these old stories about people living and driving Cadillacs in Detroit and all this bullshit, I think that's exactly what they are, exaggerated stories. Yeah, that's right, Mark. But the idea of sitting home and having the premium cable channel and eating filet mignon every night and being on welfare is a bunch of bullshit. I mean, they've got to have money from another source, because if you looked at the dollar amount you get at the different states, it's not that good. I told you, I got a nephew that used to be rich. And there's 11 of them, 9 kids. Claimed he homeschooled them. He didn't do anything. Can't read and write. Him and his wife don't really have any skills because they lost their golden ticket. He's like 57. I don't know what these people are going to do. They bought some time on their foreclosure through a bankruptcy. But once that timeline expires, where do you go with 11 people? Yep, cash jobs and drug sales. You got it. You know, there's a few guys on here that like are skilled trades, and all their viewers on here, all their jobs are cash. They haven't filed income tax in like 20 years. That's because the employers, they don't want to pay this FICA and workers' comp and all this stuff. Christ, at the end of the day, they're working like hell and they're making the same money as their workers are. Yeah, it's a different place to live now. You got that right. It really is. You look at jobs, you know, you hear on these newscasts, these jobs. Yeah, you're right, tits for tots. The trick is don't get married. That's exactly it. It's up here too. You know, a big problem up here, we don't have an OBGYN guy here. At least we didn't up until about a month ago, and there hadn't been one for like, I don't know, 5 years. And the reason for that is because they're delivering all these babies for a Medicaid rate, which really isn't even break even. And then they're taking a higher than average chance of being sued. So the only thing that could happen happened. No doctors want to work here. I've talked to doctors before, and they'll tell you, man, they just cringe. I mean, to OBGYN in Detroit or another one of these big cities with, the stats that I just talked about, you got to just cringe as a goddamn OBGYN guy and delivering babies from the parents of people that have no intention of working. And all they see on TV at night is the Bernstein Law Group talking about suing people if your kid didn't grow up to be a rocket scientist. It's the same with this Roundup bullshit now. This Roundup, this weed killer. Now, forget the environmental argument. We can talk about that some other time. There isn't even a direct link with that. It's not 100% proven. They've been using Roundup for 50 years. It's actually a form of soap, believe it or not. And guess, of course, where a jury came up with this verdict against Roundup. Guess where that happened? No surprise here. California. Where else? So now you see another couple commercials every night is suing Roundup. Just nuts. Yeah, Cheney, but it's a low rate. It's a low rate. There are a lot of doctors that don't take Medicaid. I mean, if you get a doctor that loves Medicaid, he's probably not a doctor that you'd envy and want to be in his shoes. Yeah, super Sue happy, you're right. Thank God they had that tort reform and malpractice, because now you actually have to jump through some hoops before you just file. You have to get an expert to agree, another doctor, that it was in fact malpractice before you can even file the complaint. That happened in Michigan too, that's another reason why there are a lot of jobs that are going. And that is because work comp. If they hadn't reformed work comp, there'd be no jobs. How are you?
Good.
What's happening?
Huh?
What's going on?
I just got back from the doctor.
Oh yeah, what's wrong with you?
Nothing. Tomorrow I'll get the results to see if I'm pregnant.
Wow. Pregnant, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Oh, my at-home came back positive.
Are you good? Are you hopeful for this?
I want it.
You
I
do?
want it, yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
So I'll know tomorrow.
Yeah, I remember you talked a long time ago about you didn't think you could have kids.
They told me I couldn't.
Oh, wow.
They put me on. I've been on progesterone for the last 2.5 months.
Oh, okay.
And that's supposed to make your body function like it's supposed to.
Okay.
So instead of having a period every 2 times a year, it makes me ovulate, and so on.
Who's the daddy?
What do you think?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he was making a bunch of jokes and stuff.
Well, that's good.
He didn't want kids.
That's good.
So he's
gonna have one now. Wait till he gets that payment book.
He's like, I guess we're gonna have to do a little pull-up now. I'm like, what? He's like, you're only kidding?
Hey guys, sorry about that. When I have this live on, I can't answer the phone call. I'll be on later. Have a good day. It's good talking to everybody.